Hey man, it's Phil X, and you're watching Guitar Tales with Dave Cohen. And Guitar Tales, guitar tales. Like, what else do you need, right? Guitar. We're geeks, nerds, gear, inspirations, positive vibes. Look out.
It is rare that I get this excited for a show, and I am off the charts excited for tonight's show. We have an amazing, amazing guest, but first we got to pay the bills. So let's talk about our wonderful, wonderful sponsor, Confections of a Rockstar, over here, almost here in Asbury Park. An absolutely fantastic, fantastic place if you want to get a bite to eat, look at some cool rock posters on the wall. They are wonderful. The food's great. The vibe is great. And they're rock and roll based. And cupcakes for your pooch. And inside, Little Andy's Burgers. If you want to go in there, you want to get an Alice Cooper approved burger, you will eat well. You're going to have a great time. And you will absolutely love it. Look how good that looks. Look how good that looks. Oh, go down there. I can't wait to go again. I've been there before. And I got to tell you, tonight's guest, if you want to talk about street cred, it's unbelievable. All right, I'm going to read out a few names of our guest who's played with. Eddie Vedder, Steve Lukather, Mick Jones, a Foreigner, Noel Redding, Buddy Miles, I have to catch my breath, Jason Bottom, Billy Squire, Bruce Willis, Julian Lennon, Linda Perry from Four Non Blondes, Ace Frehley, guest of our show, Leslie West, John Entwistle. I'm freaking out over this. Look behind me. There's Roger Daltrey facing us from behind on one of my albums. Mitch Ryder, Spencer Davis, members of Badfinger, John Anderson of Yes, Alan Parsons, catch my breath again, Todd Rundgren, Ann Wilson, Grand Funk Railroad, Chris Cross, Jack Bruce, and Badfinger again. Oh, yeah, and Dave Mason. So we have the great Godfrey Townsend. And here's what's absolutely crazy. Couple of weeks ago, I was hanging out with my girlfriend, watching random videos on YouTube, and I was turning her on to my favorite song on the planet Earth, which is The Real Me by The Who. And Godfrey rocked that song in 1999. The video is absolutely insane with the John Entwistle band. So
Can you see the real me? Can you?
So I'm off the charts excited to have Godfrey Townsend with us. Why don't we all hop into the studio with the great co-host.
I can't believe he hasn't played with me yet. Let me do a little switcheroo here. Put the guest in the big box.
Yeah, I want the little spot because we have a great guest.
Yeah, let me get that QR code off your face there, Dave.
I don't care. Okay. I have a face for radio, so it's okay.
Welcome. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. What a list of players. If your stories are as multitudely faceted as that list of players, we're in for quite a night tonight.
Yeah, people keep asking me or telling me I should write a book, and I am, because every time I tell a story, like the one I was kind of telling you earlier on.
Right, we had to start taping because, this is gold. Don't stop talking. Let's get it on tape.
I take that story and I copy and paste it and stick it in a folder on my desktop.
Oh, good.
So that they're all there. You know what I mean? Because then you got something to start with, and you start putting them in chronological order, or according to genres of who
right.
are. Because there's plenty of stories from each one of those guys, as you would probably
absolutely.
Well, we could even pick up where so before we started taping, when we were just chatting in our virtual green room, we just mentioned, we had Ace on the show. So give us a couple of Ace stories.
So,
Ace Frehley.
As I was saying, when I first started playing with the John Entwistle band, a guy that was going to be our tour manager, a guy named Billy St. John, he worked with Ace, with Frehley's Comet or whatever. And it was my first real big gig out on the road with needing road cases for my stuff. And he goes, I can get you a road case. I'll go into Ace's storage space and I'll grab his guitar coffin. It's just a huge road case that you put all your guitars in. And so I got, he put me on the phone with Ace, and Ace used to come and sit in on a lot of the jams. I used to run one of the pro jams at the China Club, and another place I used to go sit in on a Monday night at Bobby Nathan's jam at a place called the Dark Star Triad Club on 72nd Street. And Ace used to always come there and just plug into whatever amp and just dime it all the way up to 10 and just jam with us or whatever,
You put that on 11.
And just talking to him, like I had said to you, he kind of sounds like Barney Rubble, like from the Flintstones. He has that sounding voice, and the way he talks, hey, Godfrey, you should see my Les Paul, the biggest selling one in the world, because they're really Les Paul.
And it's at he's Queens, right? Isn't he from Queens originally?
He used to play at a place called the Coventry, which was on Queens Boulevard.
Yep.
And I started playing there in 1975 with my original band. And when I got out of high school, we started writing songs, and we went to audition, and we started playing the Coventry, and that's where Kiss got their start, really.
Right, yeah.
There, as well as Billy Squire.
Are you a New Yorker or are you a Jersey boy?
I was born in Manhattan Hospital, and in a hospital in Manhattan, but my parents lived in like Brooklyn, Queens borderline, Ridgewood, Bushwick area,
I was hoping he was going to say I was born in a New York taxi cab or something really cool.
No, it was actually the French hospital.
Put that in the books. Just forget the reality. Just put that you got born in a taxi cab.
Yeah.
We were watching, both Scott and I were watching the documentary. Did I hear an accent with your mom?
My mother was from the island of Malta, which is a small island.
Oh, nice!
It's a little dot on a globe, on a map.
Yeah.
And it's right below Sicily, but not Italian. They have their own language, their own culture, and everything.
Wow.
So she was from Malta. My dad was born in London and raised in Ireland. So
So are they? And your mom was musical. We found out.
Both of them. My father was an opera singer or an aspiring opera singer.
Wow. And
my mom sang in the opera in Malta. Her brothers were both opera singers. She sang in the chorus and she played piano. So I started banging around on neighbors. Like when we would go visit friends or the family or whatever who had pianos, I would just be banging around on them. Because piano, you just.
Right, and that's it.
Find a note and you start playing something.
I used to call it the claw when I'm a self-taught musician. And I figured out if you space out one thing and then they got a little more. They kept getting bigger and bigger. The chords.
Find your melodies and whatever. Yeah. And an uncle of mine who was my mother's brother, who was an opera singer, said, "Wow, he has a good ear. You should get a piano when you go back to the States." So I was visiting over in Malta, and
do you think music is passed down through genetics?
Well, it doesn't have to be, you know what I mean? There are some people that don't have musical parents at all that are amazing musicians, but I think it kind of helps to have it in the blood, in the DNA or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And in the house all the time.
Right.
That's what I was thinking. If your house must have just had music.
I grew up on opera and classical music, and Christmas time, or, holidays. Family, friends came over and everybody sang around the piano. There was no football game on the TV or stuff like that. It was everybody, like we were all providing the entertainment,
Excellent.
Live human entertainment right there before your eyes. Yeah.
That is great. Now, did you start, like the first instrument that you started playing in earnest, was that piano or guitar or something else?
Piano, and I was about 9 years old And I went to a local place. There was a place right over a butcher shop, Accordion Studios of
Right.
Long Island, they were called.
Uh-huh.
A lot of accordion players there,
Okay.
but there was a piano teacher, and I took piano lessons. And then, of course, once the Beatles came out and everybody saw that on Ed Sullivan and stuff, you would go.
That was it.
Yeah,
I
that's
wanna do
right.
one
They
of
don't have
those.
a keyboard guy. I need to switch instruments.
Yeah. So, and I would ask my mom, "Can I take guitar lessons? Can I take guitar lessons?" And she was like, "Oh, guitars are a dime a dozen. Guitars are a dime a dozen," is what she used to say to me, which
She's not wrong.
Yeah, she's not wrong.
But I had to do well with my piano lessons, get A's, every lesson, A's, and then she let me take guitar lessons, and then I didn't like it, because it was an old Italian guy,
Yeah.
Mary Had a Little Lamb,
Yeah.
or whatever, and I was like, no, this is not what I want to do.
Right.
And a friend's father was in a wedding band, and they had a thing called a fake book.
Yeah, I remember those.
Like it was like
I was a wedding
Yeah.
band guy.
kind of thing, and it had all the popular songs of the day with all the chord charts on top of everything. So I used to buy them from my friend's dad for $5, with 100 songs in them, and just strum along. That's how I learned how to play chords.
Right.
And just learn.
And then you're still on
Yeah.
acoustic, right?
Yeah,
You
no,
don't
I
have
had
electric.
there was actually there was a toy company named M&E that made like a
Okay.
plastic toy guitar.
Right.
And
Wow.
it had nylon strings, but it had a little thing that you hooked up to a little plastic amp.
Huh.
And it was one of
Really?
my first guitars. You look them up on Google; they're amazing.
Wow.
And I actually found one on eBay a few years ago for like less than $100 with the box and everything. The box turned into a
Oh,
case,
that's
like
great.
a carrying case with a
That's very cool.
tiger thing. And
My original, I had one of the original Tiscos.
yeah, my
Remember that company?
girlfriend's brother, my girlfriend, actually my girlfriend had one, and I would borrow hers.
Yeah.
Like when I was 15 years old, I was playing a Tisco at a lot of the block parties and
Yeah.
stuff. Because
Yeah, I had a 4 pickup 12 string. It was this hollow body. It was the stupidest guitar.
I still have. I actually don't have the original one, but one of my first guitars was like a Japanese, cheapy guitar that I got at
Yeah,
the music school where I was learning piano, and that and a little
Right,
tempo
right.
amp for $50.
Hmm.
And the guitar is actually an
Oh, that's
Ibanez.
great.
It was one of the early Ibanez,
Okay.
like 1965 or something.
Wow.
Ibanez.
Oh, I didn't even
That
know they
was
were
meant
making
to
back
be,
then.
like a copy of a Fender Jazzmaster or Jag. Like that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I even went and bought the Ibanez book. Hold on one second.
Yeah. I love this.
Oh man,
This
look at that
is
SG
great.
back there.
Yeah,
I got a question.
cool.
Oh yeah.
But this is the Ibanez.
That's very cool.
Oh, look at that. What the hell kind of pickups are
You know,
those? They're
these
not
crazy
90s.
Japanese kind of looking pickups, right?
Yeah, with like the
Little-
foil top
The
on.
little
Kind of.
Yeah.
toggle switch things here and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. And that was the guitar.
Oh, I love
That
that.
was the guitar that I had, and this and a little tempo amp with like a 10-inch speaker for $50, and that was like when I had my band with a couple of buddies from school.
Yeah.
We were rehearsing in a friend's basement and stuff.
Right.
Like that guitar, and I found one on eBay, and it was like $400.
I gotta have it.
Yeah.
Same color.
When I bought a used Tisco about 8 or 9 years ago on eBay, and the way they advertised it, they said it's so solid you could drive a fence post into frozen ground with the guitar.
That's a selling feature, I would imagine. Yeah.
That's why I was always
great
a
image,
Fender
you know?
Strat guy, or just a Strat guy in general, because they were so tough.
Make a beating. Yeah, we used to
Oh,
just
this
throw them.
79 Strat I've got back here, I got when I was a kid. One of my first guitars. And
79.
I beat the crap out of that thing.
Yeah,
And it still plays as good as the day it was made.
Yeah. And then if you broke them, you just put another
Yeah.
neck on.
It's crazy.
Right,
I
Yeah,
dropped
true.
it. It's fallen out of the case. It's
Yeah.
it's been beaten and weathered for many, many years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
your
so I-
current gig now is with the Yardbirds.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
told this is how you got on our radar. We didn't realize there were so many other
Uh-huh.
facets to your career before the Yardbirds.
Here we go.
And
Yeah.
David found an old
Look at
Yardbird.
this.
Yeah, I mean, really, I was asked to join the band like 7 years ago.
Hmm.
And my mom had just passed away. My dog passed away that summer, and I was out on
Oh,
tour, and I just was out on tour already with this other tour, and just going, you know what? I'm gonna, after this tour is over this summer, I'm just gonna take a year off
You need to mentally straighten yourself out.
and just go, what's going on?
Yeah,
You know, because
yeah.
I was
yeah.
living with my mom in
Right.
her house, in my parents' house, or whatever, taking care of my folks because they were old and stuff. And now the house is mine. I'm the only son, and okay, I got a house. Whatever they had in the bank, which wasn't a lot, but it was just like, okay, I can just kind of sit for a year and think about what I want to do. And then
Yeah.
I get this call from a woman named Margot Lewis, who she had a booking agency, and she was also managing Jim McCarty, you know, like kind of handling the Yardbirds.
Wow.
And Jim kept asking
Yeah.
her, can you find us another guitar player? Can you find us another guitar player? And she said every time that he would say that to her, she would think of my name and see my face in her mind's eye, you know, and go, I got the guy, I got the
Oh,
guy. And
Honestly, you're the perfect fit. I mean, because
I was doing
yeah.
another thing years before that with Ginger Baker's son and Jack Bruce's son.
right.
We called
Oh,
it Sons of
wow.
Cream, and we went out and played, and Margot was booking the band. So
Mm.
she had come to see us at the Iridium. We were
Right.
there for like 3 nights. And so she knew what I can do guitar-wise, you know, handle the Clapton stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
And,
You just finished a Clapton tribute type show, right?
yeah, just Saturday night we did.
Yeah.
And we haven't done it in 6 years. And we just got together and rehearsed one day at my house and went and did this show. And the band was fantastic, you know. The band just sounded great. And we sold the place out, 340 seats in this
Beautiful.
small movie theater in Belmore. And our agent now the agent that books the Yardbirds wants to work with my Clapton band as well and get us gigs.
Oh, that's
And,
great.
You know, we'll just play whenever we.
Rock
don't
is
have
not
tickets.
dead. I've been saying it.
No,
Gene Simmons is wrong.
no. Oh, is that what he
Is
said?
he going to sue me now?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Can we cut that part out?
You
Yeah,
might.
he
I'll
doesn't need
defend you,
your money.
Scott.
Yeah.
I love the name of your
Oh, yeah.
Clapton tribute. It's Clapton is God-free.
He's gone.
And that's brilliant. That's
So I met
absolutely
Lee
brilliant.
Dixon, who was Clapton's guitar tech for like 30 years, right? I met him
Okay.
one year. We were doing our jam night at Le Barbat or something in Manhattan, and Entwistle was playing with the Who at the Garden. Afterwards, he comes
Okay.
over to our jam at Le Barbat, and he brings Lee Dixon with him, who was teching for him on that tour. Lee was not working with Clapton, so he came out as John Entwistle's bass tech for that tour. And he came out. So John got up and jammed with us, and then John went up to the little party room upstairs, and I got up with a couple of friends, and we started jamming on a bunch of Cream tunes and stuff like that. And so
Right.
now John told me this story later on after it happened. Lee Dixon goes in and grabs John and goes, "You got to hear this guy playing guitar. He's got Clapton down better than Clapton."
That's
And he
great.
brings John out, and John comes out and he looks and he goes, "That's my guitar player, you asshole." So that was the story, and so I started using that in my bio, you know, like
Right,
a little thing for the thing, and then years later I saw Lee Dixon was on Facebook, so I contacted him. I said, "I don't know if you remember me, but blah blah blah," and supposedly you
Right.
said this to John. Is it true? Because I've been using it in my bio for the last 10 years. Yes, I do remember that exactly. I totally remember you. You're a good player,
that's
blah blah blah, and then I showed him the thing with the Clapton and Godfrey thing, and he loved it. He went, "This is brilliant," and I just said, "Funny, right?" And he goes, "Yes, but clever, so brilliant," and
Yeah,
the whole
yeah, we love it.
you know, with the thing, and I'm there with the psychedelic SG. And,
We watched the documentary, and
oh yeah,
I watched it from beginning to end. I loved every minute.
yeah.
of it.
My friend Art Nelson made that for me. He grew up in the neighborhood with me.
It was great. It
so,
was good to see the live performance and getting ready
yeah.
and loading your own equipment into the
Yeah.
on the streets of New York like a real trooper.
I got my rocker cart with my 6 guitars.
I got 110% respect out of me when I saw you doing that. Got your
Yeah.
gloves on. God forbid. You
You
know how many
know-
times I hurt my hand setting up
Sure.
bringing heavy equipment into a venue?
Sure. I mean, I used to deliver refrigerators before I, yeah.
Oh, really?
I did that for 10, 15 years, raising my family, having a family and everything, and went through that. So I killed my back and I killed my wrists. Like I got carpal tunnel in my wrists and stuff. And, what are you going to do? It's now I got a nice job,
life.
which is why.
Once I made the mistake helping the drummer set up his shit. And I started off as a drummer, and he grabbed the stand from me and it collapsed into my fingers.
Oh yeah.
I'm ready to play now.
Right. I hate when that happens. And
oh my God.
I was telling you about Kofi Baker. Kofi Baker is one of those guys. He's got a great work ethic like that, where he has no problems at all with packing up his drums, putting them in his pickup truck, driving 100 miles to a gig, playing, unloading himself, setting up his drums, playing the gig, packing them back up, putting them back in the truck, getting paid, and going home. He's that guy.
Yeah. Right. And that's Ginger's son, you said, right? So that's interesting to me, because when you have, like Ginger is as iconic a drummer as we've had, in rock and roll, and either one or both, makes you wonder. So someone who's Ginger's son, we might automatically assume, he must be rich, right? And life doesn't always play out that way. Ginger became iconic.
Ginger wasn't even rich.
Right.
Really, in reality, Ginger wasn't even rich until they did the Cream reunion again, and then he became a millionaire again. And then he went out and bought a bunch of like Arabian racehorses or something.
Oh God.
So.
Quite a character, but genius.
Watch the movie Beware of Mr. Baker, and you'll see
that was really great.
Kofi's in the movie as well.
Yeah.
Very crabby.
Yeah.
I met him.
And then
I met him once or twice, and he was exactly like that. Until John Entwistle reintroduced me to him.
Yeah.
And
then you had some street cred.
Right.
Yeah. We have to launch into that story. So how did you hook up with John?
So at one point I started playing with this drummer who was in a band called Rat Race Choir. That was a big band on Long Island that had toured with John Entwistle, in the 80s or whatever. And I had done a few gigs with him, this drummer, and he said, wow, he was impressed with my singing and playing. And he said, I'm going to see if I can get John Entwistle to come back out and tour, and we can put a band together with him and get a keyboard player and blah, 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 and maybe a singer. And what happened was I started running this jam at the China Club in New York City, and Entwistle was in town doing this Daltrey Sings Townsend show at Carnegie Hall.
I remember that
right?
tour.
Carnegie Hall was happening. And with Michael Kamen and an orchestra and all these guests, the Chieftains and Linda Perry and Eddie Vedder and Entwistle was there playing, and somehow or other, this guy got them to come. He sent a limo to go get them after the show and bring them over to the China Club. So they came over to the China Club, and we got them up on stage with us, and we jammed with them until like 2 or 3 in the morning that night. And then they came back the next night again to do it again. And it was a year later, not until a year later, that I got a phone call that John said, who was that guy in New York? I worked well with him. I worked well with him, And he tells a funny story about him, because after we were on tour the first year, friends of mine met him like at the Riga Royal Hotel. He used to hang out in the lobby after gigs and hold court by the bar or whatever. And they were like, wow, it's so great that you hooked up with John. How did you get this gig? How did you get this gig? And I started to tell the story, and John went, no, let me tell it. and he said, so I was looking for a guitar player. And I said to Steve, I actually asked for him personally. I said to Steve, who's the cheapest guitar player we can get in New York? And that's how I got the gig, supposedly. That was the way John told it anyway.
That's great.
Oh, that's great. My favorite clip, the one that I watched even before we heard from your agent who hooked you up with us, was Woodstock
That was
1999.
yeah, we weren't even supposed to be on
That's
that show, but we had a friend that was running the production on that stage that's inside the airplane hangar, because there was two main stages.
Right.
On either end,
Right.
And then right in the middle was an airplane hangar, and that was a smaller stage that was called the Emerging Artist Stage. It was just for
really
up and coming artists that were just signed and whatever. And and a buddy of ours was running that stage, and we were in town that weekend and off on our tour. We didn't have a date, we didn't have a gig, and he convinced all the acts that day to shave like 5 minutes off their sets so that we can play. And we just went there and played. We weren't even on the bill.
Amazing.
Well, now I'm going to guess, it's for you to play at Woodstock. I mean, there was an intensity to your performance on that tune. And I'm guessing you were appreciative of the significance of that moment. That, here I am, Godfrey, playing at fucking Woodstock, right?
Even though it was completely different.
Because
it was in Rome, New York, right? Not in
right.
White Lake, but
I mean,
it was meant to be another Woodstock festival. I mean, they did one in '94 as well, I think, right? A 25-year anniversary. Which,
but that you were belting. I mean,
if you're not going to give it your all there, what's the point, right?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone asks me, the strongest hard rock tune ever written and performed, I without hesitation, I always say the
and
Real
that's
Me.
I mean, you could see it's a capo on the 3rd fret, and so it's in C. So that first high note, can you see the real me? Can you? That's a high C at first, and that's how we opened our show every night.
Oh boy!
So
that's a hard. Yeah, you can't even loosen up.
We were
going to
get.
Do that. Wow.
Originally, they had planned on getting Joe Lynn Turner to sing for the band, because he was a friend from the city, and he was always at the jams, and we were always doing little side gigs with him and stuff. But the budget didn't allow for it, let's say. And so the second call I got after hey, John wants to have a band and he wants you to be the guitar player was, hey, can you sing this stuff too? Sure, I can. I've been listening to Tommy since I'm, 12 years old or whatever.
Just like that saved a whole bunch of money.
But I had to go and get vocal lessons. A friend of mine, his sister, Katie Agresta, is a vocal coach, and I went to her in the city and got vocal lessons from her to do exercises to have my voice every night.
You ought to protect your voice doing vocals like that, I would think, right? That is, I mean, you're belting.
Yeah, I mean, so if you belt it out the first night and you blow your voice out, do the second. These vocal warm-ups just allowed me to have my voice every night for the thing.
Now, I noticed something interesting on that tape is that, I actually saw in Philly once, I saw the Who front row, and I was right in front of Entwistle. No, it was outdoors. It was outdoors. Oh, yeah. What year did I see them?
Jones?
I forget.
Kenny Jones.
Yeah, definitely Kenny Jones. Certainly long after Keith passed. Maybe 82. No, it was after 82. It was probably 87
that might have been
something.
already Simon Phillips on drums then, or somebody.
You're right. It was Simon Phillips. It was not. Yeah, it was not Kenny. It was Simon Phillips. But what I noticed with your gig, I was listening carefully. You had all the guitar work completely nailed down, but in the John Entwistle band, he was mixed much louder.
Oh yeah.
And I noticed that you weren't hidden, but let there be no mistake. This is the John Entwistle band.
He was the one that got me all those amps that I was using. We went to the NAMM show like the year, like when we were going to tour, and he said to me,
Right.
"What kind of amps do you want?" And I went, "Marshall." And so we went to Marshall,
Right.
and we went to the Marshall
Right.
booth, and he's ready to try to get me an endorsement or whatever. And you know, there was some guitar thing happening there. I think Slash and somebody else was doing something, so couldn't get anybody's attention. You know, and here's John Entwistle like standing there going,
Yeah.
waiting for the rep guy to come over, and then he went, come with me, and he took me over to High Watt,
Ah,
and he just got me 2 High Watt
Oh.
stacks.
there you go.
And so I used those at first, but I didn't really like them. They weren't really my sound. But then he had a deal with a
Yeah.
company called Trace Elliott that made
Yeah.
really nice tube
Okay.
amps. And he was using their power amps for his bass rigs, like
Hmm.
half a dozen of them. And
Right.
so he got me these three or four Trace Elliott stacks of amps.
They look nice. You know, they
Yeah,
look
in the
really
video, I actually had a couple PV 5150 in that too, the 5150
Yeah.
stack.
Yep.
I used that right up the middle, and then the other 2 stacks on the side, like so that a dry signal and then stereo, delay and chorus
Nice.
or whatever, you know. So it's pretty huge sound.
You reminded me of a story. I was at a guitar show with Peter Frampton, believe it or not. It's kind of a long story, but I had an online music store in those days, or very in the early days of the internet.
Oh,
And,
really?
Peter wanted to sell me a bunch of his talk boxes that he was making, those big things.
Oh,
that look like pyramids.
yeah.
Anyway,
I had one.
he said, let's go over and see my friend Jim at the Marshall stand, and I see this old fella sitting there talking about Marshall
Wow.
amps, and I'm talking with him. I didn't know it was Jim fucking
And
Marshall until later on,
Wow.
and I wanted to go back. He goes, "No, it's too busy." I was so
Mhm.
embarrassed. I thought,
Wow.
why was this old man selling amplifiers?
Right.
That's
Wow.
great.
Yeah,
You know how they got started with those big stacks of amps? Pete Townsend asked him if he can make it
No, really?
if he can make an amp big and loud enough for him so that while he's playing, he can hear the people's conversations in the audience.
And
those
That
are the
was-
days where all those amps were
That's
live
that-
and not just boxes with nothing. in them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That sounds like such
Yeah.
a Pete thing.
Right.
Yeah. You know what's fun? Have you been listening to some of the Pete interviews of late? Oh my God. When he's saying, I just don't get this Led Zeppelin. I mean, I'm resentful of their success, but they're really not that
Oh.
good, but I resent them.
You know, those guys, they all have their rites of passage, don't they? You know,
Yeah.
they can kind of make fun of each
Yeah.
other because they're all kind of like up on this level of greatness, and they're all getting a little older now, so they're kind of getting no filter.
Right.
to what they're actually
I know.
or
Yeah. What does
what
Pete
do we
care?
at this
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And John Entwistle, wasn't John the one who came
Yeah.
up with the name Led
Yeah,
Zeppelin,
it
or
was
was it
actually
Pete?
him and
I thought it was John.
Keith. They were meant to form this band
Okay.
with Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
And it was going to be Page, and I forget who the other one was, but Keith and John were angry at Pete and Roger because they were late showing up for like a TV thing that they were doing, like one of those Ready Steady Go kind of things
Right.
or something, and they just were busy being drunk rock stars and showed up
Right,
late.
yeah.
And by the time they got to the studio on that particular day, Pete and Roger had already done the little segment they were going to do just with some guys in the studio that were session players or something,
Oh.
backing them up,
Okay.
which I don't even know how
Right.
that's possible. But back then, that's what John told me happened. So him and Keith just said, "Screw this, we're out of here." And then Page wanted to grab them, but somebody went to him and said, "How are you going to have a band?" I think the guy who was managing the Who.
Okay. Kit
Went to
Lambert, right?
Page and said, "How are you going to have a band where you have to play guitar if your fingers are broken?"
Mm.
No,
Ah!
trying to steal our guys out of the band, whatever. So that's when
Right.
Keith and John, invested some of their money or got an advance from their manager to buy like a Rolls Royce and hired Richard Cole to drive them, be their chauffeur, who was Led Zeppelin's tour manager, a road manager at one point as well. So they just went, we'll just have this guy drive us to the gig so this way we won't be late anymore or whatever. Isn't that crazy? I mean, this is
that is a crazy story.
I was going to say, speaking of crazy, I love that SG over your shoulder there. It looks really great.
This one?
Yeah.
This is a replica that my friend Marty painted for me.
Oh, look at that.
Clapton's SG in cream.
Isn't that awesome?
Wow.
That is spot
gorgeous.
on.
So, and this was originally painted by a woman named Marijke. She's a Dutch artist. And they had her and her husband and two friends, a couple. There was four of them, and they went as the Fool. They were called the Fool. They were a Dutch artist collective. And they painted this and Jack Bruce's 6-string Fender bass.
Yeah.
They designed a lot of clothes for people back then. They painted the Apple Boutique on Carnaby Street or Baker Street, wherever that was.
Right.
So they worked for the Beatles. They painted stuff for the Beatles. They designed a lot of clothing. The Beatles wore this clothing when they did that live All You Need Is Love broadcast. They were all wearing these like really great, cool paisley kind of tunics and stuff.
Groovy, as they used to say.
Yeah, so that's like a replica of that. And we had gotten it from, there was a guitar magazine, and it was just a centerfold, that's guitar porn, a centerfold of that guitar.
Yeah.
My friend just copied it from that, but we didn't know what was on the back of it.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
So 2001, I toured with Todd Rundgren, and he had one of them. He actually had the real one.
Oh, wow.
But he had sold it by then, and someone in Japan made him a replica of it. So I just took pictures of his, and then
so the back is accurate,
and finished it. You know what I mean? So, Todd had it, and then it went to a couple of different owners, and now the same guy that bought Gilmore's Black Strat owns it. Jim Ursel, the guy that owns the Colts or something, a football team or something. Yeah.
Wow.
we did a whole Frankenstrat show. We were talking about how I did my build and everything.
Yeah.
And
like I told you earlier, I built a lot of. I have 22 Strats or 23 Strats.
It's
and
just
I build them just from
each one is a work of art,
Yeah, and you just make them when you want. You buy the neck you want, you buy the pickups you want, the color body you want, and kind of.
All right, that's it. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, talk about wall art. What better wall art is there than guitars hanging?
You know what's good about it? When you're sitting on the couch like a couch potato watching TV, but you have all these great guitars just sitting around on stands, and you just keep glancing at them, going, "Yeah, I want to play it. I want to play that." And you eventually you just reach over and grab one, and you're sitting there playing the guitar.
We had a.
If they're all in their cases,
he's like, just pick up your guitar every day. It's just noodling around on it.
Yeah. That Dave? No, not Dave Gellis.
Joel
the guy
from.
Oh, I know Joel.
Yeah.
He's a good buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was a great guy, really nice interview, and he was just saying, just touch your guitar every day.
I met him at one of the first NAMM shows that I went to, and we made friends. And he was a whole different guy back then. I'm telling you, he was a whole different guy. And then I met him again. He was playing guitar with the Turtles. The Turtles were on one of our Hippie Fest tours.
Right.
And he was leaving to go do Rock of Ages. He was going to do that show.
Okay.
And he asked me if I would be interested in being a sub for him on that. And I just said, yeah, not my type of music, really. The heavier rock stuff is not really my type of music. And I don't want to be like committed to something like that in the city, like because that show ran seven days a week or two shows on Sunday, and all this stuff. And he left the Turtles, and then I took his place in the Turtles.
Isn't that weird?
Oh, okay.
Full circle here at Guitar Tales, Dave.
Yeah, it is. Well, a name that popped in my head, I'm sure you crossed paths. We had Steve Conti on our show very early on. Yeah, he went to our high
He's
school.
an amazing talent, an amazing singer, an amazing songwriter. God, and a great
Yep.
player.
Yeah.
We had a band back in the day, like when I said before I started playing with that drummer that got the Entwistle thing going on. I had like a trio.
Right.
It was me and a bass player and my
Yeah.
drummer Steve Murphy at the time, and we would have like a revolving fourth member. And so Steve Conti was one of them. And he would come out to
Yeah.
Queens and play these bars with us. And it was Steve Conti, Bob Mayo from Frampton's band
Yeah.
would come out and do some of the gigs with it. Pat Thrall, guitarist with Pat Travers, Asia,
Mhm.
you know.
Oh wow.
And who else was it? Andy Timmons.
Anyway,
Remember Andy Timmons?
Yeah.
He's an amazing guitar player who's made a really great career for himself as a solo guitar player. You know,
I still say the best musicians are on the East Coast.
yeah,
I really do.
I guess so.
It's you know what? It's a more eclectic bunch of guys. There, you know, there's incredible jazz players, incredible rock players, incredible heavy metal guys, and
Yeah.
you know where I live here, it's very intimidating to be in a band because everybody is so good.
Yeah. Well, it always seemed like the LA scene was a little bit more just about, you know, the look, the glam thing, the
Right.
whole, you know, it was
Yeah,
more
yeah.
about, you know, big hair and stuff like that,
Right.
rocking out, you know, whatever. Whereas, you know, I mean, you really can't say it though because there's some great guitar players that came out.
There is, but I just feel like East Coast
Yeah.
cats just blow me away constantly. And I'm talking about now, just going to see a cover band or an original band
Yeah,
now around
yeah.
here.
Yeah, people
It's just
really
like
are.
I just go, wow.
They're dedicated to their art. You know what I mean? And I think what makes you a good player is to be able to give attention to detail.
Mm.
You know, and when you're learning how to play, you're listening to it and you're really paying attention. Like we used to do it with records and turntables, and you'd have to keep going back to that spot. No, it's not that. It's this. No, no, not. You got one note wrong. You can just keep going back with that record needle until you wear out.
I literally just did a deep dive
Yeah.
My Generation thing. You know, I record my little videos and play guitar and stuff, and
Yeah.
I watch one video after another. I'm like, that ain't right. That's not right. That's right. I mean, it's a simple little riff right at the beginning of that song, but everybody was playing it wrong. You have to down tune your entire guitar
Yeah.
to get it to sound right, and that was the secret. Finally, one guy got it right, and then I looked at videos of Pete playing. I'm like, he's playing an A, but it's not an A, so he's down tuned.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, well, they did that with a lot of things, especially in the old days. They used to tune 12 strings down a whole step. 12-string guitars,
really?
especially acoustics, because it was easier on the tension on the neck. Having
Right.
12
That makes sense.
down.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of people playing 12-string acoustics back in the day with a capo.
Right.
Okay. Because it's tuned down, so
And
you
if
got to
you
do that.
listen
Oh,
to some
interesting.
Dave Mason songs and stuff that have these great acoustic 12-string parts on them, and you try to figure out, you go, how is he doing that? And it's like, no, he's tuned down and he's got a capo, and that's how he's doing it.
Well, that's kind of the segue between like if
Yeah.
you listen to the record My Generation,
Right.
you may try to play a G or something, unless you see it or see it somebody playing it and see the fingering is like.
So he's tuned
that's-
down. He's
that's
tuned
the-
down for that.
Yeah,
He's tuned
yeah.
down a whole step, and
A whole
so when
step.
he's playing that A G G
with the
G.
G in there, yeah.
But it's a trilly kind of thing because I'm a mediocre guitar player. Scott's an accomplished guitar player. And I sent Scott a silly video. I just did A and G, just
Well,
regular
that's
bar
what got me
chords.
started because he's a
Yeah.
Who fanatic, right? I'm like,
Well,
I'm going to teach Dave how to play the song properly, and I went and did it.
If you listen to it on Live at Leeds, it's just standard tuning and it's an
Right.
A.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah,
Oh,
and
is
then
it
they do a
really?
whole medley out of it where they go into like
right,
Tommy,
right.
and then they do See Me Feel Me at the end. A nice medley.
By the way, yeah, See Me Feel Me live at Leeds. I could get goosebumps right now just saying live at Leeds, See Me Feel Me. That moment.
We used to do that medley. You know, we cut the middle bit short, but we used to do My Generation into See Me Feel Me. Yeah.
Oh, really?
And yeah. We would end our night
and
with that in a bar, like, you know. That's the last thing we would play, get
wow.
everybody out. All right, let's get out of here.
Yeah, and the drummer you had with John, who was the drummer? Because he's
He was
strong.
a guy from a band called Rat Race Choir. His name was Steve Longo. Yeah, so they were
Okay.
pretty big out on the island. We used to go see them at all the big clubs
Okay.
on Long Island, you know, or whatever. And he
Yeah.
met John at a NAMM show in Chicago, I think, and hooked up with him there, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was solid. Yeah. And you were covering the vocals great. That was
Not an
fantastic.
easy task, you know.
No.
But if it's stuff that you
No.
grew up with and you kind of just know it out or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of like second nature, you know.
Well, I'm in the cover band scene right
Yeah.
here in my area, and I love trying to, like you said, get those little nuances down
Makes the
to make it
difference.
sound just like the real deal.
Yeah.
You know, and a
And when
couple
you
of
see someone play it the real way, and you go, "Yes, that's exactly it. That's right."
could-
You know,
you just if your ear is good, you could. I knew there was something wrong playing in regular tuning with the trying to play it, moving your fingers around. Like
Yeah.
that seems too complicated for Pete Townsend. It just does. I just
there had to
something
be a
about-
reason they did that. Maybe it was because it was too high, and it modulates.
yeah,
Of course, the song.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 4 key changes.
Fade away. Up another,
I know.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And if you well,
Yeah,
we better knock
yeah.
this down because by the time we get to the
Yeah,
Oh, that's true. Yeah. The key change for emphasis. I used
they
to
must
always
have tuned
call
to
it,
his voice
you know?
because if you down tune a whole step, it's not quite right. It's a little bit sharp to compare to the actual record. So I was manually tuning to the song, like you know, I had playing it over and over again. I'm like trying to get it, and I it's a little bit flatter than an actual D.
Entwistle toured with Ringo's All-Star Band
Yeah,
the year before I started touring with John. So he was just coming off Ringo's band,
Right.
and he had a lot of great stories.
Mm.
One of the first
bet.
lineups was with Randy Bachman.
right.
So
Okay. Who's got
what
a million
he told
stories?
me was that Randy Bachman was his brother, or it was either him or his brother. They were huge Who fans,
Mm.
and
Okay.
so they wrote a song, and they borrowed like different elements of Who songs to make the song.
Okay.
And the song is "You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet."
Huh.
You ain't seen nothing
Really?
yet. So, but baby, you just
Yeah,
ain't
with the
seen
stuttering, right?
nothing yet. The stuttering from my
Wow.
generation, and the bam,
Right.
bam, bam,
Makes sense.
bam, bam.
Holy crap.
It's an
Wow.
Never even
O'Reilly
thought
and my
of that.
generation. And then there's another part where it goes up, and the chords are kind of like strumming, and it's I can see for miles. It's a little piece of I can see
That's
for miles
crazy.
in the bridge
That is
or whatever.
I saw those guys in Atlantic City a couple of years ago. The iteration of it with Steve Lukather.
Oh yeah. I saw them.
That was a cool show. Steve Lukather.
We're
phenomenal.
putting together
Oh my
a
God.
drummer special, and I reached out to Greg Bissonette, and he was super
Really
nice.
good guy. I like
You know,
him.
he called me and it was like, I would love to do it. I'm just too busy with the Ringo thing right now. And I'm like, that's right. You're going
He's
to.
an awesome. I mean, he's an awesome teacher, talker. Like,
Yeah.
I just was at a thing, and he was doing like a little clinic kind of thing where he was
Well, that's where I met him years ago at a clinic.
like
so I think-
deconstructing stuff and showing you how things are done.
Yeah, he's really
You know,
great
He's
teacher.
pulling up the song on his phone and playing it on the
He
mic.
has the attention for detail.
Yes, exactly.
He's like, this isn't
Yeah.
just the rhythm. The hi-hat's going too, you know, or whatever.
Yep. And there's a lot to that. You know, you were talking about piano and the claw technique and all this kind
Yeah,
of stuff. So, you know, when you're learning all these songs and you're trying to figure out what the piano is doing or whatever, what's the piano actually doing? Because it makes it sound whatever the piano's doing in the bass and the chords. What inversion of the chord is he actually playing that makes it have that exact sound that sounds like? And a lot of these guys that were in these bands, and I'm talking about the Beatles across the board and down and everywhere,
Right,
they
right.
were not classically trained piano players.
No.
They were just guys who had good ears who could just sit down and, you know,
Yeah.
just start playing anything. So they played the piano very unorthodoxly.
Right.
whatever.
Right.
They didn't play it like a classical pianist would play. They played with, octaves in the sound, and then like the little triad chords, and that's what makes those Beatles songs sound like that.
Right.
And those songs like that.
Yeah.
So when you learn them, you have to kind of play them like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're a classically trained piano player, you're going to be doing all this fancy chording and stuff that's not going to sound like.
I love when I learn a cover song, or I'm just doing it just for doing a video or something. If I'm playing bass or drums, whatever it is, I love the little ideas. Like that's an unorthodox idea, but I love it. Van Halen songs are loaded with those, and a lot of. I was just playing the Cream song the other day, and I'm like, I love the way Jack Bruce went down to the E and came back up and with a little walking thing. All these little, you just dissect it and just try to learn every little nuance of it. It's beautiful.
He was on a tour of ours. I first met him. I was called onto a tour with John Entwistle, and I was playing in his band already, and he got called out to do this tour, and it was with 4 headliner artists. And it was going to be a Beatle tribute. Todd Rundgren, Ann Wilson from Heart, Alan Parsons, and John Entwistle. And Alan Parsons brought out a guy named David Pack to sing his stuff. David Pack was in a band called Ambrosia.
Right.
And John brought me out to sing his stuff. And then there was Ann Wilson and Todd Rundgren. So we did that. The first summer we did that. And we were learning all these Beatles songs, and everybody was coming to me and going, "What's this chord? What's this?" So I became the musical director, like just by knowing all the stuff,
By default, yeah.
The second year we went out, we had Jack Bruce on the tour, and we were going to do "Fool on the Hill." And so Jack is playing, and we're rehearsing "Fool on the Hill," and there's one part of the song where he's going to like the root chord, But I'm going, that's not what McCartney played there. He played, like an E instead of that.
Yeah. Well,
like the third.
McCartney bass lines are in it, or another.
And I had bought this book at Best Buy. And it's this big, thick book.
Yeah.
That we referred to as the Bible because it looked kind of like a Bible.
And you whipped that book out to show Jack Bruce he played the wrong goddamn note.
I at first it was like, the sweat was coming down a bit. I was going, he's playing the wrong note. And I'm going to go now and tell Jack Bruce that he's playing the wrong note. So instead of that, I turned it around and I just went, I don't know if that's what Paul is playing there.
Right. And that kind of like, I want
to be you're playing the wrong note. I'm not sure if that's what Paul played there. And then we went, he goes, well, let's go look at the Bible. And so we go and he's scrolling down and there's the tablature and there's the bass line and he's going, and I'm just going, oh crap, oh man. And he just goes, hey, you're right, man. You're right, man. And just went, okay, good. So,
wow.
So just little things.
And it sounds like he was a humble guy.
He was quite the musician's musician, Jack. I mean, he was just unbelievable. His musical knowledge and the dedication that he put to it, Entwistle was a little bit more, let's party, whatever. And, he was a serious musician too. He played brass,
right.
Trained. He played all the horns and stuff that you hear on Tommy and
really
and all that stuff. It was all John. But when we went to do the first Walk Down Abbey Road tour, he hadn't learned any of the material because we were out on tour like the month before that tour.
No time.
To be learning these songs, and I had to just cram with him in hotel rooms with writing out chord charts with him and playing all this stuff with him. At the last minute, there was like 35 songs to learn because you had to learn everybody's songs. Like he had to learn a couple of Heart songs for Ann Wilson to sing, some Todd Rundgren songs, Alan Parsons songs, and David Pack, the Ambrosia stuff, plus like 20 Beatles songs,
Was it tough with John to get, would he tamp himself down when it wasn't a Who song, like to just be more like a session guy as opposed to
I
being
don't know
John
that
Entwistle?
he had that kind of control over himself. He kind of just played
That's
everything
what I'm
like John
thinking.
Entwistle, you know.
So
And
instead of thunder fingers, like a light rain fingers
yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
thing. Is that
I
what you're
mean,
saying,
it's
Dave?
like, you know, for instance, like Todd Rundgren's song "Bang the Drum."
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty
Right.
easy, but then at one point it just goes into a breakdown, and the bass is going boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
boom,
It's like
and
oompa,
only
oompa.
he did it like John Entwistle would do it.
He would
and
want
stuff
wild.
like that. Or
Yeah.
when we did like a Beatles song, like "Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except for Me and My Monkey." There's a breakdown in there as well, where the bass goes boom, dong, 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 dong. He does one of those kind of things as well, and he
Right.
just went off on that stuff, you know, and just played it like John.
And was he with the Olympic the whole time?
No,
or
no, no,
would
no.
you know,
He
'cause
was already
that's-
using these basses that were made. They started making them. Warwick started making them, and it was a buzzard. It looked like a buzzard. It was called a buzzard bass, and it looked like a buzzard.
Okay.
The body of the bass looked like a buzzard. The headstock looked like a buzzard's beak. You know, and they were made out of wood. And then he started making them out of graphite.
Wow.
So he had all these
Okay.
graphite basses.
So he was an Olympic his whole
No,
career.
not at all. Not at all. No.
No.
And
Oh, okay.
you know, he used Fender jazz basses and Fender precision basses earlier on. He
Oh, I didn't
even
know
played
that.
a Dan Electro Longhorn for a while. One of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
In the early days.
He had over 200 guitars in his house, and when I got to his house to record an album, and we were staying for like a month. The first day we were there, it was a lot of downtime because they had to set up everything in the studio and wire everything up.
Yeah.
And he just gave me the combination to his guitar room and said, "Go upstairs and
Have a look.
check out,
Yeah.
have a look, have some fun." And I went through every one of his guitars and I cataloged them. You know,
Wow.
it was pretty amazing. And that's how I got the.
Wow.
That's how I got hooked on the different custom colored Fenders, because he had a Strat, a Telecaster, a P bass, a jazz bass, maybe a Jaguar or whatever, all in the same color, like a
Yeah.
whole set in
Wow.
like Lake Placid blue, and then a whole set in Olympic white, and a whole set in Fiesta red, and a whole set in Shoreline gold. All the custom colors that Fender made back then.
Mind-blowing.
But his were all original 60s.
The real deal. Yeah.
Right. Where was his house? Where did he live? He wasn't in Vegas,
He lived
was he?
in Gloucester, in Gloucester, in England.
I thought he lived in the States toward the end.
In what's called the Cotswolds, and his little village was
Okay.
called Stow-on-the-Wold in Cheltenham, and it was a 53-room mansion. That you can see it in the movie The Kids Are All Right. They do a video for the song Success Story, and he's got all the guitars
I
going
love that
down
too.
the staircase, and then he's
Right.
shooting the
Yeah.
gold records with the Tommy gun at the end.
Yeah. Yep.
That house, we lived in that house for months on end.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which was
Really?
pretty wild, you know.
That's got to be an experience. Now, did you ever meet the other
I
guys
met
in the Who?
Keith a few times,
Okay.
Especially after John passed away. Pete invited me backstage after one of their shows at the Garden, and I just got to sit and talk with him. I met Roger a couple of times. I met Keith actually when I was a teenager. Yeah.
Really?
I saw them at the Garden in 1974, and I was just graduating high school. And I ran up to the limo. There was a
Okay.
limo coming out of the side of the Madison Square Garden, and I'm a teenager running up to the limo, going, you know, they're in there. And Pete actually rolled the window down, and they were at a red light with lots of traffic in front of them, and
Yeah.
and I got to hang out and talk to him, and Keith was in the car with him.
Oh, that's fantastic. I saw them in '79 at the Garden.
79. Yeah.
So that was when what's his name? When Kenny took over.
Brought to you by
Yeah.
Schlitz Beer, I think.
No,
I saw the poster. But here we are
Yeah.
in an hour already, Dave. It's
We might have to pressure you to come back.
well,
sometime.
we are doing a Who special this summer.
Are you good?
Yeah, doing a Who roundtable. So if you'd like to do
Sure.
that,
Yeah, I mean, I probably have something that contributes.
you might have a little bit to say.
Let's tell everybody how we can find Godfrey. I know he's got a YouTube
Well-
channel right there. We got the QR code for you.
Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, the YouTube channel, and of course the good old Facebook.
Yeah, I got my Facebook page pretty much. You can find me there. That's what I use mostly for like advertising my gigs and stuff, or even, you know, Facebook Messenger is how I mostly communicate with people. You know, I still have an AOL email address. That's true. I have a couple of Dan Electros that I love. I use them with the Yardbirds. You know, the DC 59 or whatever. Is the one that Paige originally did. Paige originally played like White Summer and Black Mountain. And he plays Kashmir on it with Zeppelin, you know, because it's dad.
Yeah.
You know? And I think I got this directly from Dan Electro for like less than $200 at the time.
That's gorgeous. Those little lipstick pickups.
$500, you know, on you know, at Sweetwater or whatever. But I have that. I have the Longhorn bass, which was another $500 instrument that just sounds and plays really great. And you know, these guitars were made out of masonite, you know, and the lipstick tube pickups and whatever. Just a simple guitar. This is a Silvertone guitar.
Oh,
right? You see the name there, Silvertone.
Yeah. Look at, you know what I love? I love how ugly that headstock is. That is so ugly.
You know, one lipstick tube pickup, and my bass player John Montagna was throwing this out. He was like, "I'm throwing this out. Do you want it?" Yes, of course I do.
Why?
He just was cleaning up. So look at the knobs. They're like almost like the knobs that were on your right?
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly
and I
the
have
same
a picture on the wall where I have this guitar hanging. It was an ad for Silvertone, and this is the guitar that came with the amp in the case.
Yep. From the Sears catalog.
Nancy Sinatra is in the ad playing.
That's great.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Very cool.
That's very. That neck looks like it's 2 inches long.
Yeah.
Did you see it? That looks like a.
These bits are made for. I bet she can't even play it.
Look at that.
She looks good playing it, though. I got to say that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great ad.
Yeah.
Look at that.
You know, and we were kids, and we used to go look at the Lafayette, was a radio store in Manhattan, and they made kits to build your own radio receivers and all this stuff like that. They also sold a lot of electronics, and then there was a whole section in the back for like drum sets and guitars and amps, and
neat.
We were just like, as kids, just like for days going, oh, one day you'll be mine, you know. There's 4 pickups, you know, Kimberly or whatever, green Kimberly guitar with 4 pickups.
Because you need all 4 of those. The sound is so dramatically different.
We worshipped the Wish Book back in the day when we were kids. That's for sure. The Sears Wish Book.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
What bicycle I wanted, what mini bike I wasn't going to get, and you know, pool table.
You know, to get one of those Schwinn, you know, bikes or whatever, Stingray bikes.
Yeah.
They were less than $100 at the time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. But Scott and I grew up about a mile apart, and we actually were in a band called The Cure before The Cure existed.
Yeah, we had a guy in high school who had a band called Rush.
Yeah. Did you really?
He had a band called Rush before Rush
great.
was around. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
That must happen really more than we realized, huh, Dave?
I bet it did. Well, Scott poached me from my first band, which was named Bloody Smegma.
God.
They were a little punky.
Not a very commercial name.
No. There's a lot of screaming and punk rock chords.
Yeah, but they actually put out some, after I left, they put out some EPs, and they I wouldn't say they were successful, but they accomplished a little bit. Yeah. They were pretty cool. But so we're probably, this is the sign of one of these great shows is if if we don't tap the
Right.
brakes, we'll just go all night, which is great.
Talking about
So, no, this is wonderful. So we should probably wrap up. And now we forced you. You're committed to
There
come
it
back
is.
with us.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh,
Problem
this
with
is
that.
great.
Yeah.
I'm letting Dave pick the guests for this, but I think we need you on board. You're going to trump everybody
Yeah.
with your host
Yeah.
stories compared to what we have.
Yeah. I have a couple of good ones.
I bet you do. Well, this has been fabulous.
Thank
Thank
for
you
having
so
me.
much.
We'll
Appreciate it.
absolutely plug all your shows for you.
We're meant
Share
to be
them around.
playing the Yardbirds gig, right, or whatever that we're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Yardbirds.
Oh yeah,
You can actually
absolutely.
go to my Facebook page, which is just my name, Godfrey Townsend page, and
Right.
I just pinned it on my page today. Yardbirds
Perfect.
logo, and then all the dates. There's about a dozen dates that we're doing from here to out to Cincinnati-ish.
Yeah, and you're leading one of the most iconic bands in rock history. I mean, how amazing is that?
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
like I said, that was the summer when my mom passed, my dog passed. I had to take off,
Yeah.
and then I was like, "Can you give me a week or so to make a decision? Yeah, but don't wait, don't, because he really wants." And I went, "Okay." And I'm on the Happy Together tour with all these '60s artists, and I'm going, "Yeah." This call from
Yeah.
someone this morning asked me if I want to be in the Yard, and they were like, "Wow, you're a dream gig." Yeah, I guess it is. You know,
It really is.
Shocked.
I mean, that's
I guess it is. And then I went,
Yeah.
you sitting up.
yeah. That's got to be just a beautiful, sobering moment when you think about it. Like, think of when
All
like
comes
this little
full
thing.
circle.
Like, here, I'm a little kid, and I've got a Yardbirds
Right.
45 right here, and here, you're a little kid. You're listening to the Yardbirds, and now you're the
But I
top
was
person in
into
that
Clapton,
band.
like from Cream. I was into Jeff Beck from
Yeah.
like the Jeff Beck group. Page
Yep.
from Zeppelin. So when I
Oh
got
my
the
God,
gig,
yeah.
I already had developed the playing style of all three of them. I didn't really know the
Yeah.
Yardbirds material because it was before they all got,
Yeah.
to where they got or whatever. So I had to learn 20 songs that I didn't really know. I mean, I might have faked my way through For Your Love once or twice, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I just was listening to like their whole catalog of songs. I'm like, oh yeah, they played that one. That was theirs too.
Yeah.
A lot of Middle Eastern type,
That kind of stuff. It was meant to be like they did bring in like a guy on sitar to play Heart Full of Soul. And then Jeff just went, I can do that.
I can make that noise.
And he went out the room.
Jeff can do anything.
Played it for a while out there, and he came back in. And he went, look, and he went, yeah, okay, get rid of that guy, and Jeff, you just play it. That's how that happened.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's his rock and roll history.
Amazing
Well, thanks
stuff.
again for coming on with us.
Thank you. Thanks.
And we'll be following
Thank
you
you.
and plugging your stuff, and maybe we'll see you at a show on all of it.
Great.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thank you, and have a great
You too,
night.
guys.
Oh, who are we gonna end the
All
show
right,
with? You
take
just
care.
so ended so abruptly. I know we went an hour and 15 minutes, but you got to say, you want to do Bumblefoot? Okay.
Yeah,
here's
let's do
to end the
Bumblefoot
show.
for this one. All right.
Hello, I'm Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and you're watching Guitar Tales.